We can't tell that.
That's true.
Joey, I think we are live at this moment. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us as always. We've got an action-packed hour, believe me, and I've got more junk out on this table to show you. So yes, again, thank you for spending an hour with us. I promise it won't be disappointing. I will warn you, it may cost you a little money. One of the things about these kinds of things is as you go through and you look at different ways of using gear, you invariably spot something useful and say, you know, for the kind of work that I do, that would be incredibly helpful. So hopefully, for if you spot something like that, it's one of the less expensive things. But the way it's going to go tonight is I'm not shooting anything. I do have something set up in front of me, but it's really only for demonstration purposes. Joe has actually got a whole set rigged. So what I'm going to do is kind of talk through. You guys probably can't see it, but there's a whole pile of stuff over here. It's kind of everywhere. I'm going to talk through how we utilize these particular pieces, why we think they're useful, how we set them up so that they're the most useful. And then Joe's actually going to show it in a real world way. He's got a set all built, and a lot of these pieces he's using in the set. So you'll see how it all works together. So with that, Joe, anything you want to add before I get it underway?
I just want to say again, welcome everyone. We know everyone has a busy schedule, especially this time of year. So we appreciate you spending an hour with us. We'll do our best to stay on track for an hour. As Joey mentioned, he's going to be covering a lot of gear. And then my set is pre-built. I'm actually going to deconstruct it. So I'm not going to be building it for this. I'm going to be taking it apart, walking through what all the gear does. And because we're on a limited amount of time, I'm going to just turn it right back over to Joey to cover what's on his set. So, Joey, it's all yours.
Awesome. So the first thing I want to go through is different ways of mounting the camera and positioning it. Now, again, like I said, I have what this is I have this pool brush in front of me. I used it for a shot. I did a video actually yesterday that I'm going to post early next week using this thing. And so what I wanted to show was a couple things related to the camera first, and then I can get this camera out of the way and show you some other stuff. This camera is actually shooting what we're talking about. So as an example, this camera, which is obviously, in fact, let me do this. There we go. This camera here, which is kind of in my way from from a viewing standpoint, is actually showing you this view. So it's going to move around. I'm able to kind of slide it and going to give you different viewpoints. So that's what's going on there. I do have an in-camera view, which looks like that, and we have an overhead view, which looks like that. So with that in mind, let me talk you through just the camera part of it. So I use a couple different methods for mounting my camera. And what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to back this away so you can see it. Probably many of you are familiar with a ball head. I use a ball head a lot, particularly in my portrait work. When it comes to macro work, the ball head doesn't serve me very well, and I'll show you why. If I go in camera and, sorry, this camera, if I want to move the camera around, when I loosen the ball head, it immediately wants to drift in every different direction. So if I want to make a very precise composition, like I don't want to show the base, let's say, and I just want to show the bristles, and I want it to be level, I can do it, but you can see, like, as I'm going to tighten it, it's starting to move. And then it rotates and all of that. It's good for what I call coarse kinds of adjustments, but it's not that great for specific adjustments. And so if you're not familiar with the way that a ball head works, there we go. The way it works is there's a big knob, and I'll rotate it. Boy, my hand looks gigantic. So you can see it. I'll hold it from this side. There's a big giant knob here, and there's a ball right there. And so the camera can kind of do whatever it wants. And so when you put it in position, you're like, okay, good. And you tighten it down, it stays, assuming that you've tightened the rotation part. But by and large, it's what's great about it is you can just put it where you want it, tighten the knob down, and it stays. Like I said, the difficult thing is getting it in a specific position because it's not built for that. So let me show you another. Go back here so I don't make anyone sick. I'm going to take the camera out of this. And I use these quick release plates, which they have a plate on the bottom like this, and they go into this right here. So if I want to swap heads, I can just drop that in, tighten it down, and it's ready to go. I don't have to do anything like thread into the bottom or anything. And so here's a different head, and this is the one I'm going to show you now. It's got the same thing on the bottom, and what it allows me to do is put it in the very same place the ball head just was, snap it into place, and then put the camera in position. And the way that this one works, let me make it a little bit brighter so I think you can see it better. And how about if we focus down there? The way this works, which I think is fantastic, is you turn a knob and the camera will go left and right, up and down, rotate on axis. So the movements are very, very precise. And so if we go back in camera, it's going to be out of focus, I'm sure. If I want to just tilt up, I just turn the knob. And if I say, oh, well, it doesn't look level, I can just rotate the other knob and make it level. And if I say, well, I want to look more left or right, I rotate the other knob. So the good news is this is an amazing tool. The bad news is it's because it's precision, it's not going to be cheap. There are a variety of these made. Manfrotto makes one. In fact, I have it right here. It does all the same things. There's 3 different knobs. You can tilt it, go different directions, as you can see. This kind of a thing is about $150. It's just this top part right here. Compare that with something like this one, which it's better than 10 times that. But like I say, you can start and use whatever it is that you want to use. So I think that's it with the camera. So give me a second. I'm going to take the camera apart and out of the way because the rest of the stuff that I want to show you doesn't involve a camera. The great thing, if you've been with us before, you probably heard Joe and I talk about this. We use these things, they're called breadboards, and we put them on these little carpet sliders. And what it enables us to do is kind of like slide things around. So rather than it dragging on the carpet, it enables you to like make coarse movements, and then once it's where you want it to be, then you can do your fine movements on your head. It also allows you to say, okay, I'm done with this, and you just push it over there out of the way. So now I'm going to bring this one back in because we're going to use this probably for most everything else. So the next thing I want to talk through is light and control of light. So I've got my brush set up here. Let me see if I can give you an exposure that's much more reasonable. Yeah. So what I've got going is I'm raking this light across the top of those bristles. And what I want to show you is this. The way that that I think it's best to rig things, whether it's lights or light control or anything like that, is this way. This right here is called a yoke. This is the part that the light is attached to. Very often you'll see this positioned on the bottom, and it, like for example, it would be like so. And if you mount it that way, you're limited in what you can do, in the sense that it you can tilt the light and you can rotate the light, but that's about it. You can't push it forward or anything of that sort. So I prefer to do it this way and hang it from something called a drop pin. And I'll show you why. Let me turn this down so it's not blaring in your eyes. Let's say, for example, I want to take this light and I want to move it very close to the brush. I can do that by loosening this arm and then leaving this loose. This is called a grip head. Here's a different kind of one, but it always looks like that. It's got a big knob on one side. And the way that it works is because the drop pin has this knob on the top. Let's see if we go overhead, if you can see it. There's a big knob right there. And what it does is it prevents the light from falling through. So I can kind of leave this loose, which it treats it like almost like a swing. So I can position the light anywhere I want, this way, this way, this way. Plus, because I have 2 points of movement, I can lower it down. I can slide it in and out on this arm. So if I want, and I can slide the whole stand. Let's see if I can move this out of the way, not get tangled up. I can slide the whole stand. See how easy it is? I'm just rotating things. If you leave the stand loose, the stand will rotate, the light will rotate, the light will pivot. And so what I can do is I can say, well, I want it to be that close, and then I'll just raise the stand and then make fine adjustments from here. Now you say, why are you going all this trouble? Well, to me, what separates good lighting from average lighting is your ability to make it as precise as possible. And so Joe and I talk about this all the time about what we refer to as mental friction, which is if you're fighting stuff, this kind of a rigging, which is really easy to do, the pieces aren't expensive or anything like that, makes it so that you can put the light exactly where you want it to be. And then everything else is rigged the exact same way. So for example, here, if I can get it over there, I'm going to move this guy out of the way. This is the same thing. It's rigged the same way. You have 2 points of contact. So this can go up and down. I can loosen this, and that makes it rotate. I can rotate it here. I can rotate it here. And so what that enables me to do is if I want to take this and put it between the light and the brush, I can just put it into position, tighten everything down, and I've got it. If I don't have all the different points of rotation, it makes it very hard for me to position it where I want it. Sometimes what you'll see is something like this, which is a flag. You'll see here again, I've got this clamp and this clamp. So this enables me to raise and lower this in case I want to block light. If I were to just mount the flag on one, I can only go up and down. I can't go out, and I can't change the angle as much as I'd like. So the lesson, the bottom line is as much as possible, give yourself 2 points of contact or 2 points of adjustment. So with that, that's basically the rigging part that I think is important to know. I've got a bunch of other pieces over here, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the light off, push it back out of the way so we have a little more room, and then this will get less chaotic and more interesting, I think. Okay. So one of my favorite tools is this. This thing, and let me go to this camera. Nope, this camera. This thing is called a mini Mathellini clamp. Come on, focus. There we go. It's a, there we go. It's a clamp that loosens like so. And what you can do is you can put almost anything in it. So for example, I did a shot not too long ago where I was using these flashlights. And what I did is I just used this clamp as a way to hold the flashlight. And so once you have it in the clamp, then it's just a matter of this same system. Put this into the clamp, into the grip head, and then it's the same thing. Like, where do you want the light to go? So for example, let's say I wanted a light, let me give you something that you can see. Let's say that I wanted to light this. Whoops, that's right in your way. I can slide this, as you can see. That part's easy. But if I want to put the light right on top of it, because I have 2 points of adjustment, I can literally put it right there. And then if I miss a little when I tighten it up, just sliding it on the sliders allows me to position it wherever I want. So the Mathellini clamp, to me, is insanely valuable, but it will also hold flat stuff. So for example, let's say that you had something like this. You can position it in the jaws and tighten it down. It'll hold that too. You can also attach it to other things, meaning you can use it to hold, not so much like hold a light, but use it to hold it to something else. So for example, I could take this, turn it around and hold it to the pole, if that makes sense. Probably obvious. Let me move that back out of the way. This thing's really fun. This is called a magic finger. Great name. So what it is very much like a ball head. You loosen this and it will spin. So this part goes on a stand. Let me take this apart so you can see. Got too much junk. So that part mounts on there like that. Right? And then on top of it, you could put anything you want. You could put a light head. You could put, another grip head. The way that we were just using a grip head could go on here. It just gives you the ability to move things in very coarse ways. I often will hang this upside down, very much the way that I just used the, what do you call it? The drop pin with the light. This will work the same way. If you put this on the end of something, it gives you this ability to move it in a million different directions. You've probably all seen something like this, this is called a Manfrotto variable friction arm. And the way that it works is it goes into, these are called receivers. The part that you stick this into is called a receiver. 5/8 inch is the standard size. And then you can then position this anywhere you want. You tighten the knob and it stays in place. One of the super handy ways to use this thing, if you ask me, is with this. This is called a Mayfer clamp. Let me show it to you here. Nope, here. So it's got these jaws and, you tighten it down and it'll go around something, right, like that. But it's got this part right here, which is that 5/8 receiver. What you want to do is you want to look, see how that has a flat side to it? You want to snap the flat side in like so, and then you tighten this knob down. I need 3 hands. And then this then mounts to whatever you want. So in this case, like let's say we just use this pin, I could mount it to this pin. And you can position this wherever it's handy. And then on the top, it's the same thing. And up here, you can attach whatever you want, a light. People mount cameras to these all the time. You can put a grip head. The system works in such a way that everything is based on 5/8 and quarter 20. Quarter 20 for cameras, generally 3/8 and 5/8 for 3/8 and quarter 20 generally for tripod mounting. This for lighting and this kind of thing, these holes are all 5/8 inch when you're working at this scale. So everything kind of fits together, and it's like a giant erector set. And so if you have all the pieces, it's a matter of like, well, I would need to hold a flashlight in a certain place. Okay, great. So what I need is I need a mini Mathellini clamp. I need one of these grip heads, and I need something to put this on, and I'm in business. I need to hold a reflector, which is what this is. It's the same system. And so if I go to, keep going to that camera. If I go to this is the exact same thing. I'm holding a reflector there, but it's this same clamping system that allows me to position the reflector anywhere I want it. Tighten it down, everything stays in place. And so I have over here, this part, if I loosen that, I have that kind of movement. If I loosen down here, I have that kind of movement. And if I loosen it here, I have that kind of movement, which means I can put the reflector anywhere I want and at any angle I want it.
Hey,
How are we doing on
Joey.
time? Yeah.
We're doing good. We have a question from Dan. In practical terms, is the difference between the magic finger and the variable friction arm just size, with the arm being longer than the finger?
Not really, because the purposes are different. For one thing, for like the arm will do that, the finger will only do that. So you can only go 90 degrees with the finger, whereas the arm will go 180 degrees. Plus, the arm will extend out. You can go back on itself if you need it to. Do this at an angle so that you can see. So I can fold it in half. I can go straight up with it. It'll go at 90 degrees. Where the finger is basically that, or some version of this. I mean, it'll go around like that, but there's only one notch right there, so it's basically 90 degrees, and that's it. But this will hold a ton of weight. This won't hold that much weight. In fact, as long as we're talking about clamps and things like that, I'll show you something that will hold a ton of weight. This is one of my favorite tools. As I said, I got too much junk. Okay, let me go back to that camera. So this thing is kind of like the Manfrotto variable friction arm. What's different about this, aside from the fact that it's shorter, is that inside here there are teeth. So on the other clamp, it's just tension. So you can crank it down, crank it down, crank it down, and it'll still sink under enough weight. This thing, because it's got teeth right in here, I don't think you can see them. Try and angle it in such a way, but there are teeth right in between these two pieces, which means when you tighten it down, it's locked in place. The other great thing that this thing will do is once you loosen this completely, these things come off. And so it's a system where you can change pieces. So if I don't want that, and instead I want one of my mini Mathellini clamps, I can put that in there instead, and now I have a mini Mathellini clamp with this clamp. The other part is on the other end, I use these, which are, I forget the name of them. They're a certain kind of clamp made by Really Right Stuff. And if I could focus, it would be better. You'd be able to
And
see
Joey,
it.
what was the name of the arm?
It's called a infinity arm. It's made by Matthews. But this thing, there we go. I got it. This thing, and this piece comes off too. All I did is I put it's this clamp. I put this clamp in it and then added this ball to it. So essentially what I've got is, let me take this piece off so it's not confusing. So that's the arm, right? It's not very big, but it's incredibly strong. And so what you can do with it is you can take a piece like this. So this is a ball, put it on my 5/8 inch pin, and then add this clamp to it. And then up at the top, I'll lower it down so you can see it. I could add something to hold a camera, one of my mini Mathellini clamps. So it's like you can switch things around as much as you want. The great thing is using something like this, I can, if you're going to be able to see this, I'm going to take this off. Where is it's way over there. I rigged this whole thing for you and then I pushed it all out of the way. I needed a right angle so that I could attach this thing to it. So see, like if you've got something like this, you can take this clamp, which is, this is one of the greatest designs ever, if you ask me. It's got these pieces that move. So if you rotate this out of the way, now you can connect this to a tube, right? You can see it's got a recessed thing. So this tightens down and it'll clamp around a pole. It'll clamp on whatever you want. But if you rotate this back, now it'll clamp on a table or it'll clamp on something like this. So you screw it down like so, tighten it up, and then put this wherever you want it, tighten this down, and this is the strongest thing you've ever seen. I could support like a 70 to 200 and a Z9 on this clamp. It's just amazingly strong because of the teeth. So that's that. These are full
Joey, we have
size.
a couple great questions.
Yeah.
Chris asked two questions. What are the posts that you're using in the breadboard? And also, with breadboards being, on the pricier side, do you have any suggestions for alternatives?
Definitely. Let's see, if you can find places that are not, let me go back here, not science based, which is where these breadboards come from. They come from a lab company. If they're not based like that kind of a thing, or it's not a camera store, you're always going to save the most money. They make, I'm trying to think of the company. There are companies that make less flexible, meaning it's still a breadboard, but it doesn't, like all the holes are not threaded. So what you end up with is something that looks like, well, there's one there, but here's a really good example. Like here's a plate. They don't make these anymore, but you can see like this is a really cool plate, but there's only a hole there, a hole there, a hole there, and a hole there. So and a couple other ones. The problem is if you want to thread into a specific place, you're not going to be able to do it. So yes, there are other things. Joe has one on his table. It's like a little. It reminds me of like an arrowhead or something. The truth of the matter is there isn't anything that I know of that is as flexible as the breadboard and has as much, going for it. My only suggestion would be I'm trying to think. Well, you know what you could do, because I mean, and this really does make sense. It's a great question. So I have a ton of these. I'll show you in this camera. These are, come on, focus. There we go. I get these on Amazon. They're threaded and they have recessed holes and whatnot. What you could do, these are like $9.99. What you could do is take something like this and screw it to a piece of wood, and you'd have something very, because if you're using it the way we're using it with the carpet sliders, a piece of 3/4 inch, high quality plywood or something like that, the kind that's finished. You don't want the kind that you're going to get splinters from, but something like that. If you just attach this to it, then you'd have points where you could attach things. The downside is that you got to make sure that your screws are only as long as this plate. In this case, I can go through this board. There's room underneath it, so I have lots of attachment points. But that's one way. I mean, for $10 plus a little piece of wood, you'd have something similar. What was the other question, Joe? If there was?
About what you're using, what's screwing into the breadboards, the different posts.
Oh, like meaning like
Yeah.
this.
Mm-hmm.
So this here is what's called a 5/8 inch pin. It's you can get them in a variety of ways. This one is threaded from the bottom, meaning there's a screw going up through the bottom into the bottom of this to hold it in place. But they have some that have um, screws on the bottom of them. This right here, this is a 5/8 inch receiver. This is made by Kupo. Matthews makes them. There's a variety of companies that make them. Again, it's got a thread on it, and I just screw that to the board. So that makes it, and all of the breadboards have them, which makes it incredibly flexible, at least for me, because you can mount a light, you can mount a grip head, you can mount almost anything to this, and then you've probably seen we use these little poles, and we have them in different sizes to be able to do something like this, where'd that grip head go? Where you can put a grip head on it and then slide the grip head up and down on it. Was that it on the questions, Joe? I know
It
I
is.
need to turn it over to you. I just want to talk about two other things. These are full-size Mathellini clamps. These are great. I have a bunch of them up here in the ceiling, and things are like, for example, this camera is hanging from one. They're great because you can mount lights to them. You can, as you can see, mount a camera to them. They come in a variety of different configurations. This is what's called an end jaw. This is called a center jaw. And they're used for different purposes. And last thing would be this, one of the most useful things ever made. This is a clamp that also has, made by Manfrotto, that has a 5/8 inch receiver on it. And as I showed you, like with something like this goes on here and you tighten it down. And then like if you wanted to use something like this to hold, remember we were holding my brush? This is just a different way to do it. And then once this is mounted, you put the brush wherever you want it, tighten it down, and it stays. And with that, Joe, I think I've made a mess of the place. I'll turn it over to you.
That's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of
There's
stuff.
no doubt about it. And, Joey started tonight by talking about this evening might cost everyone a little bit of money because you might see something you want. And you're like, oh, I've got to have that. That happened to me already. If you guys noticed, I wasn't sure the name of an arm, the Infinity arm. And so that's going to go on my holiday list very quickly because I kind of like that. I actually like things where it's modular, where I can build things on top of each other. Before I dive into my set, I wanted to talk about Chris's question a little bit because I also have the small little It's not a platypod, it's a different brand, and they're tiny little ones. And it's the same idea. I have the sliders, try to move this over here, on the bottom, and there's the different holes in there that I can screw into, to have different attachments. And you'll see these. God, I got so many arms sticking up. I know it's hard to see on there. Um, Sometimes I can be a little frugal. I'm going to say that. And one of the things I use on my sets quite a bit are actually just weights, like a gym set. So this is the same platypod. I have that same identical Kupo receiver right here with a post on it for a light. But this is just a 2.5-inch gym weight that fits perfectly on there. So it's weighted because it's much lighter than the breadboard is. It's not as sturdy, but by adding that little 2.5-inch weight, 2.5-pound weight, it works really well for that. And I'll be honest, before I bought all the breadboards, I had purchased some of the smaller platypod style, and they work great. I just wanted something a little heavier duty with a little more options. And I think that's a great way to go, kind of an interim step, because you guys are right. The breadboards, they're proud of them. They don't give them away. But once you start using them, you'll find it makes your life much easier. So you end up diving in and buying more and more of them. So great questions. Please keep the questions coming. There was some wonderful ones. I know Joey will monitor the questions at this point for the next few minutes. My plan here is to first, I'm going to show you the shot, and I'm literally going to kind of walk through deconstructing the set. Something that's interesting that happened, Joey had not seen my set. Well, he really hasn't, except for what you guys see right now. And the gear he talked about is almost identical to what I look around my set. I've built things a little bit different in some areas, but for the most part, you're going to see we follow a lot of the same principles because I know the way I work. And if it's not easy for me to change something, I might leave it. If I can make fine tune adjustments, I'll do it. If that fine tune adjustment is going to take me 20 minutes to get a different stand or something else, I might kind of say maybe not. But the way to elevate your work is really to sweat those small details. And taking the time to rig everything up front makes your life much, much easier. So I'm going to switch some cameras around for a second. I'm going to send this one to stream. And let's see if this works. I'm going to pop something in here. So on the screen, you guys hopefully can see an image. Joey, do you guys see the sunglasses?
We do.
Perfect. So this is the photograph. It's already been captured. A little light retouching, post-production happened on it, but not a ton of post-production. What I'll mention about this, and actually I'll go in picture here also, with the post-production on this image, and it's common for all my images, when I shoot in camera, I use a very neutral setting. So as I'm shooting, things tend to look a little bit desaturated and flat. And I want that because it gives me a lot more what I would call ceiling for when I'm processing. So if we jump in camera here, this is actually in camera right now. And it is a little bit not quite as rich and saturated, partially because, right now, if I jump to this view, you'll see I have that big light hitting me. Well, it is flooding the set a little bit with light. So my subject here is not quite as rich as it was when I captured it, but it's on the same path that you're seeing. I'm going to adjust the focus just a tiny bit so you can see a little bit of a range of what we have in here. So inside the glasses, there's a reflection that's a railroad tracks. So that's in there. And then the background I don't think we'll be able to see in focus is another image. So on my set, and I'll show you guys my cameras. So this camera you guys have all seen. The in-camera view we'll spend a little time on. A little bit of a backed off view. So when Joey said his set was a mess, this one's kind of the same right now. It's pretty big disaster. And then the last camera in here is on the back side of the set. It's actually, if I put my hand in here, gives you an idea. Here's the lens. So between these two shots, there's the lens and there's the lens. So my thought process for this tonight is to literally deconstruct my set in the way that it was kind of reverse order. What you're going to see quite a bit of is the mini grip. And on Joey's set, you probably noticed he had the mini grip. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, there is one right here, and there's one in the back. There's the full size grip. Joey also had the micro. So there's actually 3 different sizes. And I think I have 5 of these rigged on my set right now. Joking before, I kind of told Joey, I bet some people buy these. It's one of my favorite pieces of gear, hands down, because it's lightweight and very, very sturdy.
And
So I'm going to set. Yep.
one of the things about it is you you find out that it's made out of plastic, and you think, oh, it's not going to work very well. It's, because when we're used to the heavy duty metal ones, it's not going to work all that well. They're amazing, and they're not that they're very inexpensive. I mean, relatively speaking, they're amazingly useful.
Well, one of the other things before I dive in is, you guys can see this post here, and here's one of those minis on it. So you can see it fits, this way on top. But it's hard to see with the camera, but the way it's designed, I can go through see if I can put it over me so you see it, the opening there, or the smaller opening. So I could clamp it on the 5/8 post or the smaller post, which is incredibly versatile. You don't have this option on the full size ones. So it works both ways, which for me is absolutely amazing. So taking a peek at the set, kind of the back side, see if I can reach over the top without really causing havoc. It's a little confusing because 2 things are happening right here. I have my sunglasses, and there's a mini Mathellini clamp that's holding them here. And there's the mini Mathellini. And then also right behind it, tucked in, is a arm, a, a clothespin, and there's a mirror. So what the mirror's doing, see if I can just wiggle it a little bit. If you look at the nose piece, that little black rubber piece for the nose you can see the highlight. So this mirror, what it was doing, and this is the last piece I added on this set. What I wanted to have happen, originally it was just too dark. I needed a little highlight. So that mirror had to slide in there. What was difficult is I've got stuff everywhere. I need to get it in. So there's this long arm, and these arms, this is part of the mini grip set, and there's extension arms. Some are threaded, and so you can extend them if you want to, or I have longer ones. And you'll notice there's like 4 of these on the set right now. So with that, let's go back here. I have that long arm coming in, and I need to be able to slide it all the way out. So there is a breadboard. There's one of these posts just going straight up and down, and there's a mini clamp, a mini grip. I couldn't really fit a mini grip in here very well. And that's where the micro grip would have worked well. In this case, I had the ability, because I can slide it in and out. I could rotate it if I want to. I can raise it up and down, and I can pivot it. But the beauty is it can go away and move in and out just like that. Nothing else was affected on this set. The second to last, and again, I'm just going to work in reverse so you can see what's happening. I'm going to walk around a little bit. So just so you guys know, what I have here on the set, lying on the set is one picture here, and then coming up the other side, this little guy, is another photograph. They're just 2 16 by 20 photographs that I have that I thought would be fun to use. So the second to last thing was on the set itself, where my light is, that blue coloring was in certain areas just a little too, let's see if I can get my hand in here, just a little too bright in this area. So what I wanted to do was knock it down without turning down the power, because I wanted it bright some areas. So I have a 6-inch dot just to subtract some light. And it's on once again, I have a breadboard. I have one of those Kupo adapters. There's a little post sitting in, you guys can't see it. I'm pointing to it, but you can't see it. A post. And this guy just dropped right on there. And the beauty is, now I don't have the extra point of contact, but I can rotate it, raise it, turn it very easily. And that's what was subtracting the light. And if we take a peek in camera, just walking back over, that is just me moving that dot in and out. Now it's not in exact position anymore, uh, but that's where I can just move it around and add or subtract. I can subtract light with it. And this is a thicker dot, so it's subtracting quite a bit. So let me slide that out of the way because that was one of the other pieces of gear in there. So I see, Charlie, your comment, it's Matthews that makes that gear. Oh, Joey's probably adding to that right now into the comment. So let's see, what else do we have here? Well, next was some of the lighting components. And I have two different lights, and I'll walk to the back of the set. And I have the blue light and the warm light. So I just kind of went with, complementary colors. I wanted that warm versus cool feel. One of the things I do with my lighting quite often, and I know most of you, some people have been with us before, know this, I light from the back forward. So what I mean by that, you would think the subject in this shot is really the glasses, the warm part, but the way I start with lighting tends to be the opposite, the background. So my first light I wanted to tackle was the blue light. Now, I think I'm going to move it around a little so you can see it. Again, I'm tearing my set apart, so nothing's going to look great. There is, trying to see if there's a view that will have it. There isn't. It's almost, I want to tell you guys, take my word for it, that the yoke, I'll just turn it maybe a little bit. My light is what, like Joey had, upside down. The yoke is going up. I do have a drop pin, so it's loose. I can wiggle it. I can spin it, so it is on a drop pin. I could undo the other clamp, raise it up here, move it around. So it's really easy to adjust this light. This one is set up, well, I didn't work exactly in reverse because this was the first light I did for the background. But the beauty is it's not going to go anywhere. I can move it, I can slide it, everything's loose, but the way it's rigged, as Joey showed, it's not going to go anywhere. And it gives me a lot of control. And I do have little blue gel. Oh, take that back. I have two blue gels on this, and they're simply another clothespin to get that attached with that. So pretty straightforward. It is on a little bit larger breadboard. The breadboards on my set right now are 6 inches and 8-inch breadboards. There's a 12 sitting on the shelf. I find these work really well for me, the 6 and the 8s, because the size, the 8s are big and heavy. I can add weight to them and they'll hold a light really well. The 6, I like them because I can slide them in and out in the small little areas. And I always like being able to do that. Makes my life easy with that. So obviously the cool light has gone away. We do see some light on the set, and that's that light that's, well, lighting me. I can turn it on and off a little bit. There's a couple lights in here. So I'll turn that one back on. So let's take a look at the other light that's back here. This one is another LED, and I'm just going to come back to the set. Now, I ran out of space for this shot. You guys can see my hands in here. I would have liked to have rigged this one the exact same fashion, upside down, with a lot more control. I ran into a little problem because all the different cameras in here, but this light is on a breadboard. Pretty straightforward, just have some gels on it, but again, easy enough to move. But this was really important that I could fine tune this, because if we look in camera, and I'll try to do this from the side a little bit, where this light hits really affects the shot quite a bit. So I needed to make sure that more than up and down, raising and lowering the light, I need to be able to pivot it and just turn it. Because where it hits the background, and kind of the fun thing about this shot, there's actually not a single light directly hitting a subject. This light right now, and my hand is in the that's creepy actually. My hand is in the reflection of the glasses. It's not in front of the camera. This would be my hand in front of the camera. This is my hand on the set. That is just creepy, and I'll admit to that. I like it, though. So that light could be rigged that direction. So that's the lighting. I'm going to turn this light off now because we're done with this one. And we haven't even got to the subject yet or the camera. So the subject, of course, now that I turn the lights off, let's see if we can see it okay. Oh, we can. I'll give us a little extra light. That's what I'll do. Just so we can see it a little bit more, maybe. Let's just put it right there. I am not afraid to admit that the rigging of the glasses took the first go around probably about 3 hours. And then I paused, took a break overnight, came back. I'm like, okay, I've got some better ideas. I was close, and it's probably only a few degrees off from where I started. So the glasses are sitting here. Now, there is a mini Mathellini clamp, as you guys can see. And if I go back to this view, we can see the post here. And I'm going to go ahead and just slide it out. Doesn't matter where exactly it is. You can see the rig on it. So I can raise and lower, as Joey talked about. I can extend this arm. It can pivot here. It can pivot here also. So everything in here has the ability to move really well. I can put it anywhere I want to put it, which was a complete lightsaber, as you can imagine, trying to get this into position because I wanted it at a certain angle. I wanted it, just a little bit at this angle, a little bit at that angle. And I prefer to shoot full frame. I don't like to crop too much. So the millimeters matter. Now for the mini Mathellini, see if I can undo this. I actually just took gaffer's tape and a little bit of foam. There's a tiny bit of foam right inside the glass on the arm. And then I wrapped around some gaffer's tape so it wouldn't crush it. And it just clamped down really well, and it wasn't going to move. It gave me the ability to put this any direction I wanted in the set. There's no way I could have done it without a big rig, because I also wanted to make sure the rig was, I had some distance. If I had built everything right inside the set, right inside where the camera is, right next to it, my lighting's going to be problematic. The mirror's going to be problematic. I was trying to get everything put away a tiny bit. And it's funny that Joey rigged something that looked identical to this, not knowing my set. So pretty still set up. Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of stuff on my set also. So let's take a look at just the pictures. I'm going to get these out of the way. And I guess my frugal side that I had mentioned, the picture on the table is being held in place by another 2.5-inch weight. Figure, why not? And we can just see how it was sitting right down here. And here's one photograph. And it's just lying on the set. It can go away. So I'm cleaning up my set while doing this, actually. That's what this one's all about. And here's the other one. And the picture's just kind of resting here. But from the back side, let's see if we can see it. We can. There is, if you see my finger right below the camera, there's an arm here, and there is a clamp. I'll just drop it down. And now probably from the front we can see it. Yep, there's the arm coming across. Now, Joey had mentioned on his that he had a Mayfer's clamp. I call them super clamps, but same kind of idea. And I have a post on it. And on the post is a full-size grip head, and that's where this rod was connected. And on my set is one of these clamps holding that together. So I've done a good job tearing this apart, which means the only last thing is my camera. So tripod, pretty straightforward. See if we can see it from this view. Yeah, this view works pretty well. Joey had mentioned the pros and cons of a ball head, and I completely agree about that. You know, when you work with a ball head, and sitting here is the exact same ball head, the Really Right Stuff one, it's great. You can kind of rough it in, get it pretty close. But that's the problem. You can get it pretty close. But if you noticed on my set, everything was really fine tuned. Let me just see if I can focus it. There we go, just so we see something. So I have my ball head sitting here, and it goes from here to here. Above it is another Arca Swiss item. It's not the cube, it's something called a leveler. There's two. This is the larger size. It doesn't do everything the cube can do, but it can do a lot of it. But here's the benefit for me, or what I liked. It's a little smaller, and it's also about half the price. So there's a positive there. But here's the beauty of it. And we can see it on the back of the camera. And if I go in camera, it's completely geared. So if I want to rotate it or go up and down. So the way I rig this, I actually have the benefit of the ball head to get me close, and then I could completely fine tune the movements. And when you're working with something macro or really close, having this capability will really save you in the long run. It really is a godsend to be able to do this. Just subtle little movements, and it rotates really well with that. And Joey, I think I've made a complete mess of my set at this moment. I'm trying to think if I missed everything, and I think I have everything here.
It looks like
Whew.
yeah, it looks like you did a good job cleaning up. That's the funny thing. We always, when Joe and I are, we talk about this a bunch. When we do a shot and we, are going along, it's like you're pulling out all this gear to make it work, and then it's very satisfying to like take it all apart, put it all away, and kind of like be very much like I guess the way a painter would. I don't paint. I wish I could, but the way a painter would start with a blank canvas, all this gets cleaned up and you start from from scratch with the next shot. I did want to answer. Chris had a question about macro rail. Macro rail works. I think what you're probably referring to is something like this,
Yeah.
which is the macro rail. What this allows you to do is you can make coarse movements. So, for example, you can see if I can do this in a way where you can see it. You can slide the camera in and out, and then you can, by turning these knobs, this slides backward and forward. And if you have two of them, you can mate them together in at opposite angles, so you can make it go left and right and forward and back. The thing it won't do is you can't make it tilt, which is what the cube will do. You can tilt forward and back, rock side to side, rotate on the same plane. So like this is the cube is sitting here. Once you've leveled this, like, and it's got a bubble level, once you've leveled it, you can then turn this knob and it'll rotate the camera without going off axis. So there's a lot of things it'll do. Having said that, if what you want to do is you just want to be able to move left and right or in and out, a macro rail would be great. And then I also saw Grant had a question about the drop down pin. Um, yeah, you can buy a pin. They're made by Matthews. Um, all it is this. It's this part right here, and it's just it's got this knob at the top, and this part at the bottom to hold something, and that's it. And I think they're like 10, $12, something like that. They're heavy, I'll tell you that. But yeah, you can definitely buy these on their own. And then
Yeah, I was just going to add to Chris's on the macro rail. I use it all the time, and when I'm using it, it really is to either go side to side. 'Cause I only have the one. I can't go side to side, in and out. I tend to use it more for the side to side, in that if I want to move my camera just a little bit. And I find for me, it's mostly necessary when I go greater than 1 to 1. When I start going 2 to 1 or pushing that, and it really is those small movements, that's when I start adding the macro rail. And although it might look sometimes a little Frankensteinish, I have the ball head, I have the Arca Swiss, everything is incredibly locked down. These pieces are designed to go together. Joey early on was showing how he has the plates on the bottom of all his different heads, and it is a huge, I'm probably grabbing the wrong button, I am, benefit to spend a few extra dollars and just to make sure on all of your heads, whether it's Arca Swiss or a ball head or anything else, tripod head, to have these plates, because everything then just goes together incredibly easy with that. And I know for me, it's a huge time saver, and everything just feels like it locks down really well. So I'll add this right on top of everything else. The plate on it works for an Arca Swiss style, same with the top. So the same Arca Swiss style plate works across the board for everything with
Right.
that. Wow. Um, yeah, I saw Thor Labs question. Um, yeah, we're not
Yeah.
going to argue with you about Matthews and Thor Lab. No, we're not sponsored by any of these guys. It's what it is. We find gear. We both use gear that makes our life easier. Um, I think we all start out using gear that a little less expensive sometimes, and I spend money where it's necessary. I have
Right.
some, ball heads that are really right stuff that they're expensive, and I have some that are incredibly cheap, but I'm not putting cameras on them. I'm
Yeah.
using them for lightweight things. So I pick and choose. I mean, you guys notice I have at least 2 clothespins. And trust me, I'm sure Matthews and Really Right Stuff make something that would work better than a clothespin, but it works for me really well. So I
Right.
definitely pick and choose. But when I hit a point where I get frustrated because something's not working the way I want, I know if I get frustrated, the shot's not going to be there. So I have to do everything in my power to make sure I have the gear that makes it just flow for me a little bit better.
Yep.
So I think with that, we are a couple minutes over, so I apologize. I don't think I saw any more questions. Um, we also want to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone and happy holidays. I
Definitely.
know in December, I think we have a couple other sessions coming up in December. I would be remiss if I didn't point out in January, we do start up our specialty workshops again. There's 10 different ones. They're 90 minutes and they're always recorded. So if you're interested in those, please check out the site. We've added a whole bunch more to our video page on the site. So please take a peek. Or most of the past sessions are there, and a lot of our social media stuff is there also.
Yeah.
Joey, any last comments?
The only thing I would add is we would love to hear from you if, obviously this was all about gear. If there's something that you'd like us to touch on for an hour in December, like Joe said, we've got a couple sessions planned, one for December 8th, I think, and one for December 15th, back to back. If there's something that you have in mind you'd love to know about, please shoot us an email on our website, and we'll probably take you up on it, because we're always looking for things to talk about that you might be interested in. So with that, as Joe said, we're over time, and we want to respect your time. So thank you for joining us. Look for our invitation for the ones in December, and we hope we can see you again.
Have a great evening, everyone, and happy holidays. Good night. Charlie, it's the illuminatedphotographer.com.